Oh, we are live.
Look, we're on the internet.
The internet,
The internets.
the webs, the interwebs.
Hey, everybody. We're going to be popping on here in just a couple minutes. Thought I'd crank it up a little bit early to give people an opportunity to come on out. So all the little dings are buzzing on people's phones. We'll just kind of hang out here for a minute and give people an opportunity to come on in. So, but while we do that, babe, anything that you want to start off with? What are we going to talk about? What are we talk about today?
Want to hear a funny story?
Okay, start them off with a funny story. So this is what you get for being here early, by the way.
Yeah, you get my funny story. Ryan is our 5-year-old girl, very girly. So this week she has always loved the name Isabel and Sophia. Loves those names. Always uses them for her dollies, or my name is Isabel or Sophia when we're playing something, whatever. Loves those names. Anyway, this week we were all playing in the playroom and she goes, "Mom, why didn't you name me Isabel?" And I said, "Well, because I really loved the name Ryan and I wanted you to be Ryan." She goes, "Well, I want to be Isabel. You can call me Isabel." And I said, "I'm not going to call you Isabel. I love the name Ryan and I'm going to call you that." And she goes, "Well," and by the way, she's in her footy pajamas still, right? So pink footy pajamas, little teeny 5-year-old. "Well, I'm just going to find another family." And she just walked right out the front door. It's cold outside. And she just marched right out the front door. I mean, she was legitimately upset. It wasn't like she was being funny. She was legitimately upset. So I was like, oh my gosh. And of course I watched her, but I didn't go get her. And she came back inside and she goes, "Well, are you going to call me Isabel now?" As if she's like, I was serious. I said, "No, I'm going to call you Ryan."
She's putting her foot down.
And she yelled at me and she goes, "Then I'm finding another family." She is sassy.
Great. So feel free to volunteer in the comments below if you're willing to take our daughter when she turns 13. Because
I hope she's not awful sassy. I mean, right now she's funny sassy.
Yeah, for sure. She's going to be funny disciplined. Is what she's going to be.
We'll see.
So here's what we got today, and we'll give people a couple more minutes to jump in. We're going to talk a little bit about just our channel generally for a short amount of time. Kind of what these Sunday chats are designed to be. Talk a little bit about what we've got upcoming on the Marriage by Design channel this coming month of November. And then going to talk just a little bit at the end about the election. There's plenty of information out there about the election, and you're currently on either YouTube or Facebook watching this right now. So I'm sure on your way to clicking on this video, you probably passed 8 or 10 or 12 unwanted opinions from people on the election. So I'm not going to belabor that too much. I'm just going to talk a little bit about how we as Christians think about the election and kind of encourage you as a married couple and as a family about how you should think about the election. Not necessarily you should do this or you should believe this, but more, just a couple of things to keep in mind as we go into Tuesday. So that's kind of what we got on the schedule. So we'll give people about 30 seconds or so more to file in. If you're on with us, throw a comment in. Just say what's up, and if you have questions while we're talking, feel free to jump those on there. We'll address every single one of them individually. So that's really the point behind this, these videos on Sundays, is to kind of go recap what we talked about during the week, answer questions that people have. So as you jump on, please fire us a what's up in the comments, and we'll get cranking shortly after that.
Good.
And we got this fire rolling right now, so
yeah, it's like a fireside chat.
Yeah, a little fireside chat.
That will not be the case when it's summer and blazing hot here.
Oh, Braun's in the house.
Yeah.
Priscilla, thanks for joining us. Hey, thank you so much for being such a contributor on both the YouTube side and the Facebook side. We appreciate you and your family so much. Your investment in our son was and is invaluable. So thank you so much for doing that.
Cool. Glad to hear.
All right. Well, should we jump in, baby?
Jump.
All right. So here's the purpose of what our Sunday night chats really are designed to be. So if you may have seen a couple of weeks back, we were invited on with Virgil Walker as one of his Tuesday Talk guests. And he had been passed some of our YouTube videos through a mutual friend of ours that had seen them, and he watched a few of them, and he reached out to us and said, "Hey, I've seen your videos and your material, and man, I think it's really important to get that word out." So, he wanted to have us on his show. Now, if you don't know who Virgil Walker is, he's a pastor for Westside Church in Omaha, Nebraska, but he is also a co-host of a podcast called Just Thinking for Yourself. It can be found on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and all the rest, and I'd highly recommend it. So they come out with podcasts about every other week, and he and his co-host Daryl, it's because it's only every other week, they're a little bit longer, right? So 2.5+ hours for a podcast. But man, if they don't dig deep in what's going on in the world around, but from a biblical standpoint, right? So Daryl and Virgil both are super inspiring to us, because one of the things we talk about with our channel is we want it to be steeped in the Word. Man, if they don't take moral, current issues of morality and what's going on, and they've been tackling the Black Lives Matter and all the other stuff that's been going on in this country over the last 6 months, and really break it down from a Christian standpoint, getting in the Bible, saying, don't forget what the Bible says here, and the way they tie it all together, man, it's amazing.
It's great.
So that podcast, Just Thinking for Yourself, is the #1 Christian podcast right now in viewership and subscribers. And so he asked us to come on, and he just wanted to kind of, give us some exposure. But in prepping for that, we asked him, well, Virgil, tell us as you see our channel. We're not podcasters, right? As I'm sure people that listen to a lot of podcasts would go, yeah, we could tell that. But yeah, we were new to this. So, he's been doing it for a number of years. Yep. So we just asked him, what would you suggest? And he, having looked at a number of a bunch of our material on YouTube, he said, or podcast, he said, what I would do is pick the 2 shows that you do each week that you really feel you're called to do, and just focus on those 2, right? And fill them full of content for your viewers and or your listeners, and then do 1 live show a week to talk about it, right? Because as you know, if you've been watching our YouTube channel or listening to our podcast, a lot of the topics that we tackle can be uncomfortable topics, right? We're talking about marriage, we're talking about communication, we're talking about sexual things within marriage, we're talking about raising our kids, we're talking about how do we address difficult topics with our kids, divorce, blended families, all the rest. And so he said what I really think would be beneficial is for you to do a live show once a week where you open it up for people who may have listened but have questions. And so that's what this is designed to do. So the general flow of this will be, we'll kick it off, welcome the folks, maybe have a little initial discussion back and forth with you guys, the viewers, then talk a little bit about the shows that came out that last week, and then talk a little bit about what we're doing the following week or weeks, and then maybe share just a brief something that's going on, with us, and certainly answer any questions. So the thought behind this is it'll go 20 to 30 minutes. But certainly if there are questions or discussions being had, then we're flexible to do that. So
Nathan's long-winded, so it might go a little bit longer than 20 minutes.
Hey, we're at 9 minutes and 20 seconds, so calm down. All right, so that's what we're gonna do. So if you didn't have a chance to check it out last week, Family Friday was a top 5, which every time there's a 5th week, we do a top 5. For the 5th week.
Those are so
Friday. Fun. And it's basically we pick a topic and we give our top 5 in that topic. And what was ours last Friday?
Top 5 things we like to do with our kids to connect with them.
That's right. And we had a special guest.
We had our 10-year-old Jackson on, and he gave his top 5 ways that he likes to connect with us as well.
Right.
That was super fun.
Tons of fun. He was just over the top.
Yeah, so we don't talk about these things beforehand. I think he had a question about one that he asked you about beforehand, but Nathan and I don't know our lists before. I didn't know what Jackson was going to say. He's pretty talkative, so I knew he would have some things to say, but I didn't ask him anything, and we just sat down and did it, and it was super fun to hear what he had to say.
I was really surprised by what he had, without spoiling it, because I want the folks to go watch the video.
Some of them were surprising, for sure.
Yeah, I would say that as well. There were a couple that he had that I thought, okay, I feel like I would have guessed that, but there were a couple that I thought, what? Those are the things exactly that he loves to connect with us on. Yeah. So that was a lot of fun. We also finished our Thirsty Thursday series on the Song of Solomon. So if you didn't have a chance to check those out, love for you to check those out. A little bit of a steamy book of the Bible, so that's good.
Yes, it is.
Then we talked on Testosterone Tuesday and Women Power Wednesday about friendship. So certainly if you find yourself going, I want to know more about friendship. Why is that important? What does it matter to me? What's the Bible say about friendship? Andrea had some excellent guests on talking about prioritizing friendships in a busy world and also what it takes to be a good friend. So particularly the Women Power Wednesdays were really good. So week 3 and 4 for sure.
Yeah.
Yep. And then on Marriage Monday, what did we talk about on Marriage Monday?
I don't know. That's terrible.
I mean, what are we doing here?
Oh no. My brain is mush. The more kids I have, the more I lack brain power. I don't know.
All right. So
do you know?
So hold on, while you're looking that up, I'm gonna talk about the reason I brought up that top 5 is because we're gonna use that as a jumping off point into our Family Friday for this coming Friday, because, and this is another point of these catch-ups on the weekend, our Family Friday for this coming Friday is actually in response to some comments that we got on live. YouTube. What?
I'm fighting what we did on Monday. Okay, sorry, keep going.
So, the point is, by you guys jumping on, giving us some feedback, letting us know, hey, what are some questions that you have, that directly results in us being able to, make some changes to the show and make sure that we're talking about, what's going on. Priscilla knows.
Yes, thank you. Oh, we're terrible. Family dynamics. Yeah, navigating family relationships.
That's right.
Oh, thank you so much.
Upcoming holidays and all that.
I'm glad you're on it.
Yikes.
Her brain has not been mushed by her kids.
No, that's right. That's right. Okay, so here's the jump off into Family Friday for next week. So how this ties into the top 5, and I'm spoiling the top 5 a little bit. So if you don't want to know this spoiler, hit mute for the next probably 3 or 4 minutes. But one of Jackson's top 5 was... Oh,
you are giving it away.
Well, because it ties into Family Friday. So one of his top 5s was having deep conversation with us as his parents. 1-on-2, right? Jackson and mom and dad talking about, and the example he used when he wrote these out, because I asked him to write them out on note cards ahead of time, and he wrote them out, and he asked me if this was appropriate for him to say on our channel. And God bless him. You can tell he's the son of some people that are into YouTube recently, because he overheard Andrea and I making the sad commentary that our Song of Solomon episode from week 3, so a couple weeks back, was called 3 weeks ago, was called Let's Talk About Sex. That was the title of the episode. It got about 200 more hits than any of our other videos, almost certainly because people were searching YouTube for sex. And I had made the comment to Andrea, that's really sad, but also really funny, and I hope some people that were trying to see naked people actually watched us talk about what the Bible has to say about sex. So he heard me comment on that, because I made the cynical comment that, man, I should just put that word in every video we do, and then imagine how many people will watch our stuff. So he came out and he said, hey, so one of my top 5 is having deep conversations with your children. And he said, like when we talked about sex. And I said, man, I didn't know that conversation meant a lot to you. And he said, yeah, it really did. And also, if I say the word sex, then lots more people will watch your video.
Oh my gosh.
And which made me laugh out loud. But super sweet, right? He's being very supportive. So anyway, but my point was, we talked about that a little bit in the video, is what that was like from his perspective for us to talk about sex with him. And he's 10, and we had that conversation with him the beginning of 2020, back when we thought this was going to be a good year. And so we talked with him about that, and it really impacted him and has sparked a lot of conversation. Well, we have gotten several comments from people personally, as well as through YouTube and through Facebook, of people saying, hey, what curriculum do you use when you talked about sex with Jackson? Do you have some curriculum you recommend? What do those conversations look like? When is an appropriate time to have that conversation? And we just got one of those comments yesterday from one of you guys that's been great to go on this journey with us. And so we want to honor that comment and address that directly. So we're actually going to do this Family Friday. This Friday will be about talking about sex specifically with our kids and what that looked like for us. Talking about sex is one of those things where it's very child specific, right? But I think there are general principles that apply to all of our children. Like, for example, all of our children are all growing up right now in 2020 if you're watching this live, right? I mean, so there are certain things like, it doesn't matter how Christian bubbly your life is, there are certain realities of the world around us, and we need to be honest about those as parents. So we're going to talk about that this coming Friday. So make sure you check that out if you have questions about talking about sex with your kids. And then if you have questions after watching that video, we'll be right back here next Sunday.
Right. JJ says, deep conversations with your child. That's awesome. He and his wife can't even have deep conversations.
First of all,
I doubt that.
That's right. That's right. Hey, your girls are young, though, right? I mean, as they get a little bit older, they're going to crave that, particularly from you as their dad, because as we talked about maybe a week ago, your girls are hardwired to look at you as God in their lives until they reach a place where they can have their own relationship with God, right? I mean, that's why we call God our Father, right? I mean, they are bred with this is my dad and this is my mom and they're so amazing and they're all powerful and so many of those aspects of God that we adore, all powerful, all knowing, all of those, all omniscient, omnipresent, right? The eyes in the back of the head thing. I mean, that's a way that as kids we put God qualities on our parents while we're young. It's like we're hardwired to look at our parents that way. So the challenge for us is, I think we raised this in the episode, what kind of example of God are you and I?
Yeah.
And tragically, I can admit, not always a great one.
Me.
Yeah, me either.
I got excited. I'm remembering when Jackson was younger, I don't know, 4 or 5, we had him convinced that I had eyes on the back of my head, and he would be like, where are they? And he was convinced. It was great. But going back to the conversations with your kids, JJ, at the ages that your girls are, deep conversations for them are like, I'm trying to think, like, why they think this dress is beautiful and how they feel when they're, like, deep conversations aren't what you probably think of.
Sure.
But we find with our 3-year-old and our 5-year-old, deep conversations are like odd, but for them it's deep.
Sure. Talking about what they dreamed about and things like that.
Yeah.
For sure.
That's fun.
That's great. So this Friday, how to talk about sex with your kids. We'll be doing that. Okay, Marriage Monday this month, guys. Huge treat for everybody.
Really
huge. We are going to have the whole month our mentor couple on as special guests on Marriage Monday. Names are Tim and Carla. They played an integral role in us even being here today. And I don't mean being on a podcast about marriage. I mean being in the same room as each other. And if you watched our very first episodes on Marriage by Design, you can go back and check them out. Our story, if you don't know our story. But there was a couple that intervened in our marriage at I believe, the calling of the Lord, and they answered that call. And because of that, We remained in our
Yeah,
marriage.
God worked through them in great ways.
Totally. So we've got them for the whole month because we want to talk about mentoring other couples in marriage and what that looks like. What does it look like to be a mentor couple? What does it look like to have a mentor couple? Right? And that term, you might hear that and think that's kind of an awkward term, but it's a term we specifically pick because I'm not asking you to have people to counsel in marriage, right? Because that term has now become a term of art, particularly in this country, right? Counseling. It doesn't mean the way the Bible refers to counseling. It means like you go see a professional psychologist, and that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a couple you can have in your life that you look up to and model your marriage and your raising of your family after that.
Yeah.
After that.
Yeah,
couple.
they're helping to disciple you and helping in, when you're in a rut and trying to get out of that rut. Lots of different things.
Right.
Ours did a lot for us.
Yeah,
I mean,
no
they
doubt.
went above and beyond the calling.
No doubt. So the first episode, the one that will come out tomorrow morning, is they're just talk about what was going on their side of the table while they were standing in the gap for our marriage. So if you have a couple in your life right now where you really feel like the Lord's calling you to be an intercessor for them in their marriage, right? To stand in the gap, maybe believe in their marriage and believe in God's plan for their marriage even when they don't, please see that episode that comes out tomorrow morning at 5 to be able to hear what, all that they did for us. That would be great. And then we will continue on thereon for the whole month. Going to be amazing.
Yeah. Really
awesome.
Fun. It was fun.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else, babe, about the upcoming November? So one of the things that to close the conversation on our conversation with Virgil, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday shows are being paused for now. And we're just going to focus on the Monday and the Friday shows and then these Sunday meetups. So, by all means, love to have you back every Sunday. And again, we're not going to belabor it too long. I'll have you know, although I am long-winded, we're at 22 minutes and we're about to move into the last thing that we're going to talk about today. So
I love you whether you're long-winded or not.
I know you do. Anything else, baby, on this upcoming month?
No.
Or the changes to the show?
So, and then since we're just at the beginning of the month, so we're going to do that Family Friday this Friday. And then we're going to talk about some holiday, Christmas topics, right?
Yeah. So actually, should we preview the shows that we're kind of looking at doing for this upcoming month?
Sure.
Okay.
If you have them in front of you.
All right, I do. So we already said this coming Friday, we're going to be talking about how to talk about sex with your kids. Then a couple others that we have going on for this month. We're going to talk about combating materialism in the family. That one's going to come out the morning of Black Friday. So combating materialism in the family.
I'm so glad Black Friday coordinated itself with our
That's right.
release.
Perfect. Nailed it. All right. Then taking responsibility for parenting. We're going to talk about that this month as well. And then we're also going to talk about how the media is redefining the family. So how do television shows and even things like commercials, how are those redefining what the family is and what the family stands for? And of course, how do we stand against that as God-fearing parents and as God-fearing couples? So those are the things we're going to talk about this month. How to talk with your kids about sex, how the media is redefining the family, combating materialism in the family, and taking responsibility for parenting. Then just one quick preview for December. We are going to talk about honoring Christ at Christmas because that's something that is a huge topic for Christian parents is do we do Santa? Do we not do Santa? Do we do presents? Do we not do presents? How do we try and redeem what the season of Christmas has become with what the season of Christmas
and I think we'll
be.
maybe give you a different perspective than maybe what we've heard.
And super likely you'll see Andrea and I rehash a marriage-long argument about whether we should or shouldn't do Santa with our kids. So if you like that sort of thing,
it seems to come up every month or so.
That's right.
Our podcast anyway.
That's right. So that's what we are looking at for the next few weeks. Not necessarily in that order. The only one I know for sure is this coming Friday, how to talk with your kids about sex.
Yep. All right.
Anything else, baby?
Nope.
Okay. So I don't really know that much about it, but there's some sort of thing happening on Tuesday where we I think it's like student president.
Oh my gosh. Student council?
So, look,
No,
we
we're
all
voting in a
know
presidential election.
that's right. We all know at this point, the date's down the corner, but it's November 1st, right? On November 3rd, we will be electing a new president here in the United States, as well as there will be senators up for election. There will be congressmen and women up for election. There are governors up for election, state congress people, school board members, issues that are on the ballot as far as should or shouldn't we. In the state that we're in, which is Nebraska, we're talking about should or shouldn't we allow professional gambling within the state, right? Casinos. Should we allow casinos in the state of Nebraska or not? Which, if you're watching from a number of other states, you may be thinking, man, well, how the heck? Exactly right. But I know there are states in the United States that are voting on things like, should we allow cocaine and methamphetamine, to be things that are no longer illegal, felony illegal, right? Which, that's the types of things that are on the election right now. Now, you probably, unless you have been under a rock for the last 6 months, you probably know that the presidential election is between the current president, President Trump, and the challenger, previous Vice President Joe Biden. So what I want to talk about a little bit today is not necessarily how to vote, but because you have to follow your convictions on that. I'm happy to share with you who I'm going to vote for, and I'll do that at the end of the video. But the purpose of this video is not to say, hey, my guy, rah, rah, here's why you should vote for my guy, and if you vote for the other guy, you're going to burn in the fires of hell, right? Which, if you watch Facebook, pay attention to Facebook, that seems to be the only two ways you can come down on the issue. Either you vote for my guy, or you're obviously evil. And it's not helpful. It's not God-honoring. And we've got to restore a sense of civility in this country, or it's over anyway, so it really doesn't matter. So what I want to talk about is, as we think about elections, what are a couple of things that we as Christians need to keep in mind? And as you have thoughts or comments or questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. We're not signing off until we've answered every single one of them. So if you have questions, please feel free.
About the elections or something else.
Right. So this is not going to be a civics discussion, although I think that would be beneficial, and we probably will do that at some point, just to talk about how the government in this country works and why it's important to your family, because it's directly important to your family. Here's the reality. We hear lots of people say, the United States, this is a democracy, and this democracy, respect the democracy. In the United States, we have a democracy.
It's not a democracy.
Right. That's right. While a republic, which is what we have a republic, a democratic republic, but while the word Democrat is in that, democratic republic, we're not a democracy. Now, our general broad form of government is a democracy. I understand that. But it's important that we make sure we're clear what we have is a democratic republic. Well, why is that important? Because in a democracy, we've all done this before, right? Everybody gets one vote. You vote, majority rules, right? And in fact, there were a whole contingency of people that wanted to do that in this country when this country was founded. Wisely, the founders went away from that, drawn strongly by small states, right? Because here's the problem with a democracy. I don't know if you guys know, but there's lots of people that live on the coast. California, New York, Pennsylvania, a lot of these large coastal states have a lot of people, right? So if we have a democracy, then what we have is just you vote, right? And the majority rules, which means guess how much power you in Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, all the states in the middle, the quote, 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 flyover states, right? Guess how much power all of those folks have in a direct democracy? 0. Because all of our votes combined don't stack up to enough votes to overcome the sheer population numbers that live on the East Coast and the West Coast. So a very small state, New Jersey specifically, said, look, we can't have just straight democracy majority rules. There has to be some way.
There's such a small part of the country that's being heard.
That's right. And New Jersey said, I don't want New York telling me how to run my state. New York's its own state, right? I mean, if you live in the Midwest, how relatable are you to the lives of someone living in California, right? We live two very distinct lives. Not to borrow a saying we say on here quite often, one or the other is not wrong. They're just different. But I don't want someone in California telling me, a rural farm state in Nebraska, how to live my life. They manage their lives where they're at. In the same way, I wouldn't even know how to begin to tell them how to run their life, right? So that's why the republic piece of this is important. We don't vote directly on the president. We vote on electors in our state who will go to Washington and cast their votes as a representative of us for the president, right? So on Tuesday night, what you're going to see, and I'm sure you've seen this in the past, you're going to see a tally of electoral college votes because each state is allocated a certain number of electoral college votes based on their population. And so when we cast our votes, you have states that are, quote, all or nothing states where whoever wins the popular vote within that state gets all the electors in that state, right? You also have states where it's broken up into electoral college districts, right? Where that district is going to vote, and whoever wins popular vote in that district, that elector, who's a real person that has been selected by the election commission of either the Republican or the Democratic Party, they're responsible for going to Washington and casting that electoral college vote for whomever the people have directed them to vote for, right? And that's a bit of an oversimplification, but again, I don't want Andrea to start telling you about how I'm long-winded again. Coach, I see you watching the time. So here's the point. The two things that I wanted to talk about are, one, don't get distracted, and two, focus on unity, right? Don't get distracted, focus on unity. Okay? First one is don't get distracted. There are tons of distractions around this election, right? At the end of the day, we have something that most people who have walked this earth never had and never will have, and that's the ability to vote, right? Tons of people on this earth never had an opportunity to make their opinion known with regards to their leaders, with regards to issues going on in their state, right? Forever, it was the case, hey, if the guy who runs Nebraska, and I'm not in the United States, but in other countries, if Nebraska was in another country, whoever runs Nebraska would say, yeah, I want gambling, or no, I don't want gambling, and that's what would happen. And how you feel about it or don't feel about it means nothing, which means you have no say, you have no opportunity to stand up for righteousness in where you lived, right? I mean, that was the case for a sweeping majority of people around the world. We're so fortunate in this country to not have that.
Oh, yeah.
We have an opportunity to make our opinion known, to stand up for righteousness. But here's the problem. When you see what's going on around and the conversations that are going on, it's never about the issues. It's always about the distractions, right? Well, yeah, that person's beliefs might align with what your beliefs are, but, they had an affair. Or, this person's beliefs might align with your beliefs, but, that person's a criminal. Those are distractions. Right? We need to get serious about standing up for the issues that we find biblically align with the Lord's heart for this country. And that doesn't mean just, you hear about people talk about one issue voters, right? We shouldn't be one issue voters because we don't worship a one issue God, right? We see biblically there's God's best for all of these issues in our life. But as I read the Bible and as I look at the country around us, there are a couple of things that stand out specifically to me that I hone in on, and there's no distracting me from those things. And one is, I simply cannot go to eternity and stand before the Lord, and when he asks me, what did I stand for when I was on this earth? I simply cannot stand before him and say, I didn't stand for life. Like, for me, that's crucial. I must stand for that. Because as we see biblically, we see from the life of Christ, from his directives to the disciples, he was, in all ways, he stood up for life, particularly innocent life. And, we talk now, we look back at the slave years in this country and think, man, what a absolute abomination that was. And let me be clear, it was. That was a horrible institution that is a reality of our country that was absolutely contrary to God's will. Here's what I'm convinced of. 100 years from now, our children's children will look back at us, and they will look at us as ridiculous as we look back at the slave owners of yesteryear.
Right, that's true.
Right? They'll look back at that and say, so you actually thought it was cool to just
kill babies,
get pregnant, and then just kill the child, and we're just, that was just okay. It was okay.
Yeah, like Nathan was saying, we look back and think slavery was ridiculous. How can anybody do it? It was normalized. Right. So do we think critically about what's normalized? Were people back when slavery was normal, were they thinking critically about it, or were they just kind of going along with, this is how we do things? Yep. That's it. Right. Well, I think that's what's happened today, is it's like, this is how we do things. This is what's easy. Right? Slavery, that was the normal thing. It made life easier on a certain population.
Right.
It was what was just done. So we're just going to keep repeating the issue. Well, that's kind of what abortion is today. It's seemingly easy, and it's just kind of become normalized and accepted.
And at the end of the day, it is a given over to what I say. What matters to me is what matters the most, right? In the same way that having cheap labor for me is what matters the most. And yeah, is it wrong to own another human being? Yeah, that's probably not good. But at the end of the day, it makes my life easier. And so we'll just sort of all look the other direction.
Yeah.
Right? It was an abomination. Abortion is absolutely that same abomination. And it's not even a different temptation. Right? The temptation's the same. Right? Well, yeah, this is probably not great. But man, I'm too young to have a child. Man, I don't want to have to carry a baby for 9 months, and then, I don't even know who the dad, or we've got our whole lives ahead of us, and baby's really going to throw a wrench in that. It's the same thing. We just need to be willing to call it as it is. It's the same motivation, and it needs to stop. So for me, that's a key issue for me, and it's not just, look, once you stop standing up for the importance, the sanctity of human life, right? Which we can go right to Genesis and we can see God created them man and woman, right? The sanctity of human life from the moment of conception to the moment of natural death. Once you go out of the way on the front end with conception, you simply cannot stand up for it on the back end with regards to euthanasia. So for me, it's really easy. God gives life, God takes life, the end. Right? For me, that's what it is. So if a life comes into being, then God brought it into being. It's not my place to take that life away. And when God chooses to call someone home, then that's God's choice. We don't always understand it. Sometimes it's really tragic, and we have to wrestle with the Lord with that. But the Lord is the giver and taker of life in His sovereignty. So for me, that's really important. Here's the other thing that for me is really important. I believe there are two schools of thought in this country. One is that the collective is the most important, right? Whatever benefits the collective the most, that's what we should be pursuing. There's another school of thought in this country
that... Do you believe that, even if it's different than your personal opinion?
What do you mean? How do you mean that?
If the collective is different than what you would want for your own self, for the country.
Well, so, right. So, I mean, I think that's what people that believe that believe.
I think Nathan lives that. Like, if you don't know Nathan, he may feel like this person would be great for me, but for the collective country, you know, maybe not in this election, but in other things. Like, there are laws that you disagree with, but for the collective, it's a good thing. So you're like, that's the right thing then.
Sure, and certainly there's that part of us that's
sorry, I'm shutting off the ambiance.
There's that part of us as Christians that desire God's best for all people. So certainly that.
Absolutely.
But the two groups of people are the ones that believe whatever benefits everyone the most is what we should do, and another group that says no, the individual is the one that knows best. Mm-hmm. And that's the side that I fall on.
Never mind.
Right.
That's
so
not the road I was going down, but never mind.
Right. But so for me, the issue is, you know, when you look at people on the Democrats on the left, a lot of times what you see is that they fundamentally believe that.
Leslie, thank you.
Thanks, Leslie. Have a good night. That they believe that fundamentally human beings are good. Right? Because socialism and a lot of things that the progressives are wanting to see done only work if human beings are fundamentally good. Right? Socialism works great if we all desire only for everyone else to be built up. Right? That's why it can work in small groups. Because if you can get a small group of people that all genuinely believe that I'm willing to sacrifice so that the entire group gets better, then that works great.
Sure.
So if you believe that human beings are fundamentally good, socialism can work really well, right? And then that's where then the belief of what's screwing it up is people, it's the nature versus nurture, right? By nature, human beings are good, but they're being nurtured by their parents and this horrible capitalist society, they're being perverted. And that's why socialism isn't working, right? Versus what I believe and what I believe the conservatives believe, and I'm intentionally not saying Republicans, I'm saying conservatives. Republicans, be better. But what I believe is that the Bible teaches human beings fundamentally are born into a sinful world, and sin is unavoidable for human beings. It has been that way ever since the fall of man with Adam and Eve, with the exception of only one man to ever walk the earth, Jesus Christ. And so for us, we recognize that because of sin, socialism doesn't work.
Sure, and the Bible says the heart is wicked.
Scale. That's right. The heart is wicked. Who can know it? Right.
Yeah,
hopelessly deceitful. The Bible says, who can know it? Right. So for me, as I look at that, that is why those are the two things where I went, okay, what do the Republicans stand for, right? What does their platform say, right? Because we vote when we vote for someone, we're voting for a style of governance, not a person, which is going to become very important here in a moment. Versus what the Democrats say they stand for and their platform. I compared those two things. I did my own research into what does the Bible say about those things. I had a lot of conversation with this wonderful woman that the Lord's given me, where we challenge each other on, yeah, but the Bible does say this. Well, but what about this when it comes to this issue? And we went back and forth, sharpened each other on that. And at the end of the day, I have continued to be conservative. And for me, that conservative comes from the word conserve, right? We're trying to conserve the liberties as laid out in the Constitution of the United States. And for me, I would also say spiritually, I am conservative, trying to conserve the Reformations as Luther came out, right? Sola Scriptura, solo Christ, right? Only Scripture, only Christ, only faith, only grace, right? Those sort of tenets of the Protestant Reformation. I want to conserve those things. Same thing politically. I want to conserve. We're here for what? We find these things to be self-evident. Life, liberty, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And for me, the Republican Party.
Did it say happiness though?
The pursuit of happiness.
The freedom
the pursuit of happiness. Right. Which, by the way, and sometimes we'll talk about this, that language that was
land.
specifically put in there, it wasn't originally that way. It was originally meant to be life, liberty, and property. And actually, guys like Benjamin Franklin wrote that out specifically as a way of undermining abortion. Or sorry, as a way of undermining slavery, not abortion, slavery. They wrote that in there as a way of undermining slavery because they knew as people in this country matured, there would be more and more voices that would look at that and go, but we don't have that. This whole group of people that are being sold into slavery don't have that pursuit of happiness. They've had that stolen from them. They built a fault line under slavery right into the Constitution. And we'll talk about that at some point. That's the kind of stuff I love to talk about. Nathan should do like a
history series for
wall builders,
school-age kids or something. He loves history. And he's great at explaining it.
I do love it. Go to Wall Builders. Wallbuilders. I believe it's .com, might be .org. Go to Wall Builders and check it out. They've got a ton of great stuff on there. And maybe sometime we'll have some more discussion on that. But all that to say that that's why I personally am conservative. Would you add or take any of that away with regards to you, babe?
No, we're very similar in how we believe. There's things that we differ on sometimes, but we're pretty similar in how we believe and how we look at things. I have been saying for months that I don't get anxious about who's going to be our president the next 4 years, whether it's Trump or Biden. I don't get anxious. I feel the need to pray, and that's what I've been doing. But I don't have this impending doom if one of them over the other gets elected. I don't have any fear about that because I know God is in control. That does not mean necessarily that the person that God would put in that role is going to be in that role. It also doesn't mean that the two candidates that we're electing would be are either of God's candidates. I don't know, but
as far as who he would quote unquote vote for.
Right. So I know God's in control. So regardless of who is elected, God's still in control and he's still sovereign. So
that's right.
So he knows, he sees, he's involved in what's going on. I know that back in the time when the Israelites were in captivity, in the book of Exodus, that at the end of their captivity, there was a Pharaoh that was very against the Lord, but God used that Pharaoh to set his people free.
That's right, babe.
And that was God's plan from the time of his promise to Abraham, that his people would be free. He used a Pharaoh that was set against the Lord, and he used that Pharaoh to set the people free.
Yeah.
And I know that would not be somebody that God would vote in to be the Pharaoh, not that there was voting, but that wouldn't have been God's ultimate plan to have a godless Pharaoh to be ruling the people and to be keeping his chosen people in captivity.
But he used
him. Yeah, I also know that King David is somebody who was prideful, an adulterer, a murderer, and God changed his heart and used him in amazing ways. And he became king and his life ended up being surrendered over to the Lord. So God can use people that end up, surrendering themselves, or he can use them for his purposes, even if they don't. So I know the track we're going on, God's going to use it. So I guess that's all to say, pray consistently, because it is a big deal to have an election. Yep. It is a big deal to have somebody chosen to run our country.
Yep.
So prayer is so important, and God delights in that. And we see in the Bible that prayer changes the course of history.
That's right.
So it is important to pray, but having anxiety about it, there's no need for that, because God's always in control.
Yeah, totally right. JJ, I see you down there with your voting for the candidate that most resembles Abraham Lincoln.
Nice.
Nice. So don't get distracted, right? That includes not getting distracted. We live in an age where everyone is, how do they look? Is it someone I'd want to be buddies with, right? I mean, is that is this candidate or that candidate? Is it someone that I think it'd be fun to hang out with, right? As if that matters as to whether or not they would be a good leader of our country or not. So don't get distracted by that, right? Most of the people I talk to, they want to talk about stuff that really doesn't have to do with whether or not the candidate will stand up for what's right or not, but rather are they a good person, right? I mean, we just, that's a rabbit hole that we can never escape from if we start going down that road.
Although
right?
It would be
because
nice to have,
sure would
it
be.
would be great if every candidate that we could vote for would be somebody that we felt like lined up morally.
Sure, it would
with
be.
us and
Sure, it would be.
personality-wise.
You bet. Yeah, I would love that, and I pray for that. I mean, I pray for our kids' generation that godly men and women would step into those roles, and we've seen some of that. Even now, where there's members of the Senate and Congress that are standing up overtly for righteousness in ways we haven't seen in years. So I believe the Lord's doing that. But getting drawn into this conversation of, well, you can't vote for that. You can't vote for that person because haven't you seen them? They're a jerk. Okay, but what do they stand up for? And I'm willing to admit, with President Trump, I did not vote for him in 2016. I didn't have any track record from him other than his word. And I did not believe him to be genuine in the things that he was saying he would stand up for. That was me personally. And I don't mind sharing that.
So we voted
publicly. So we voted third party because I for sure am not voting for Hillary for all the reasons that we just talked about. Right, standing up for life and believing that believing in the individual. So I did not vote for him then. I've seen what he's done from 2016 to 2020, and while I have not been happy with everything that he's done, I still believe he's a jerk. I still believe he's unkind towards other people.
Prideful.
He's prideful. And that will cost him and has cost him. And I'm not, that's not a threat. The Bible says, with the pride comes the fall, right? The Lord's not going to allow a prideful man to not see the natural consequences of his pride. And we've already seen.
But hey, again,
right?
Let's pray that he recognizes that and surrenders that to the Lord.
That's right. I have been incredibly impressed with Vice President Mike Pence. I think he's been amazing. I have seen the things he's said and read, and I do believe him to be a man of God, which I'm thrilled, and I'm thrilled that he probably has the president's ear more than anybody else, so that's great. But yeah, I didn't vote for him in 2016, but having seen what he's done the last 4 years,
who are you voting for?
I am going to vote for President Trump for a second term. Here in a couple of days, and I'm happy to vote for him, not because I'm happy with everything he does, but because his track record now shows me that he is going to stand up for life. He's going to stand up for my freedom to worship God as I see fit, and my freedom to be able to raise my kids and walk in my marriage in those freedoms.
So before we sat down here, I was going to vote for Trump as well, but I've decided. Kidding. I was going to say I'm going to write in Nathan Warnock after this conversation. I just realized the other day, I realized, because I forget how old we are, I realized we are old enough to be, you are old enough, I don't want to be the president of the United States.
Yeah, I mean,
that's crazy.
I've admitted more things in this podcast over the last 6 months that would disqualify me from being president than, nobody would even have to dig anything up. They could just... They just play the videos. The political ad would just be, in Nathan Warnock's own words, he's an adulterer and a jerk. See?
You're not a jerk.
I was. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us.
Sorry,
Thank you guys for hanging around. I told Andrea to try and keep it short, and she just doesn't listen. So thank you guys much for being here.
Yeah, if you got questions, write them in real quick.
We'll give a couple minutes here for any questions or thoughts that you guys have. Please chuck them down in the comments down there. Man, so appreciate you guys joining us. Go vote, right? That's the most important thing. Go vote. You have an opportunity to do it. Please go do it. Take that seriously. We'll give a couple minutes here if anybody has any
Thanks
questions.
for those that commented.
Yeah, Leslie,
watched.
thanks
We
for
really
joining us.
appreciate it.
I know you're watching this on replay because you had to bounce, but thank you so much for being a part of it. JJ, man, love you. Love your heart for the country. Love your heart for God's people. Thanks so much. Priscilla,
Hey, Warnock 2020.
thanks so much for being on and for all
yeah.
you do. And ain't nobody voting. One vote, Priscilla. That is a waste of your vote right there. That's what that is. No, go out and vote, guys. And here's what I would suggest. If you have kids, even this year, take them in with you to the poll.
Right.
All right. Do the mask thing or whatever you got to do. That's fine. But take them in with you,
Thanks,
please. Yeah, Brittany, man, thanks for being on. I appreciate it. Take your kids with you. They need to see that, right? They need to see that this is and make it a big deal. Right, like, hey, we're gonna go in. We're gonna stand up for what we believe. Talk through some of these things with them.
Yeah, we let ours fill in our bubbles for us.
Yeah,
Get them involved.
see if you can find a sample ballot. Right, just Google sample ballot and your county. You should be able to find one so that you kind of know going in. Right, it's not a closed book test, so you can fill out a sample ballot ahead of time. Maybe talk it over with some people that you trust, so that by the time you get in there, you don't go, oh, I don't know how I feel about this issue.
That's right. You can take time to look it up on your phone.
That's right. That's right. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
man,
we
love
really
you guys
do.
all so much. Can't wait to see you a week from now. Check us out tomorrow. Monday will be us with Tim and Carla. And then remember Friday, how to talk about sex with your kids. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. And remember,
God is for your marriage
and your family.